What's up, guys? So I wanted to do this a little bit different this week. I know that we weren't able to find time in the diary to make sure that we had the live video. We are trying to find a new time for that this coming week. But I've also been going through the check-ins and I've seen there's a lot of questions that have been coming in. So what I wanted to do was try to make sure that we cover these questions and I'm going to do it through this, but there are a few other bits to cover. So today we'll be going through those check-ins, but I also want to just cover the progress so far and this really important point of reset and refocus. So you're about halfway through the 8-week challenge. Now, regardless of how your last couple of weeks have gone, nobody's at a point that they need to, even if you've had a bad few weeks, then it's certainly not a point that you need to come away from this challenge. Now, if you choose that that's going to be what you want to do and that's the way that you want to manage it, that's absolutely fine. However, what I can tell you is that regardless of everything else going on, we are still able to reset, refocus, and try and go again from day one on the 8 weeks to the end of the 8 weeks, which gives you the next 4 weeks to make a big impact and do what you can, despite however the last week or two has gone. Now, some of you will be absolutely flying. I know some of you are doing really well at the minute. So obviously for you guys, it's still just as important to reset and refocus and make sure that we are trying to get the most out of this next 4 weeks now. And actually, I know that people talk about, oh, well, weight loss will slow down after the initial phase. Fat loss actually doesn't. So this, for us in this sort of time scale, we should have now more data. And this should actually be the next 4 weeks. You should probably get more out of it than what you've got so far, or at least something equivalent dependent on what you can do. And just make sure that we cover the overall communication. I've put 10 questions, but I think there's quite a few more than that as well. And I'll try and just answer the questions that came in on the check-ins. I have seen them just to type them on here, but I've certainly not planned anything for it. So some of them might take me a second to work out, but we'll go from there. So before we start, what you should have, everybody, just because I've seen a few people on the check-in forms that I don't think have this sorted. Please, 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 if this isn't done, you can either email me directly, you can message me on the app, or obviously message whoever's assigned as your coach, but you should all have a calorie and nutrition target set. That might just be calories, it might be calories and macros, but regardless of whether you're even going to use it, that should be showing under your meal plan section or your goals section, sorry, on the app. If it's not, it should be there. So please make us aware that it's missing. We should all have that. That's going to be really important because otherwise, yes, we can go for habit-based nutrition, but ultimately, we're not really sure exactly where we need to be aiming for. So if you're missing that, please email your coach. You can fire me a message straight away and I will get onto them to make sure that it's done. But you should definitely have that. You should also have your training program scheduled. Now, we had a bit of an issue last week in terms of, I don't know why I'd logged into the app. It's probably something that I've done, so apologies if it is. But everyone in the groups got, or on a main program, got taken off the main program. I've tried to reassign as many people as I can. However, if you're not assigned to me as a coach, which most of you won't be, then this might not be done yet. So please check that all of your workouts are already scheduled in for next week. And realistically, it should be for the next couple of weeks as well. You should have that scheduled into the diary. So please make sure that that's there. And again, if not, let me know or directly message your coach so that they schedule your workouts. It's no good not having this because at the end of the day, the accountability side and things is missing, obviously, if we're not there. What you might have, and this isn't essential, the other two are essential. If you've not got it, I want to know because I want to make sure that you have got everything that we can give you to get the best results out of the next few weeks. The bit that's not is the daily habits, but we do try and use them as much as possible. So this might be things like track your nutrition or drink 2 liters of water or have your 5 a day. These things, again, if you know that you've got a habit that you're working on, you should see this in your diary. So please make sure that you are, and it might not even be set by your coach. It might just be something that you're trying to religiously do at the minute. It might be sleep 8 hours. So please make sure that these are scheduled as well, because for us, the more data that we've got, and for you, the more clear it is in terms of what we're wanting you to do on a daily basis, the better. So again, please just make sure that you have all of this. So progress so far, really important is that I want you to stop and think, okay, what's the end goal? What are we trying to achieve? What did I want to achieve by the end of this 8 weeks? And an example here that I'll give you is 8 kilos. If you wanted to lose 8 kilos, I'd said the first 2 weeks are less important from a weight loss point of view, because that's figuring everything out. So let's assume that we've not lost anything in the first 2 weeks. Since then, we may have lost a kilo a week. So you are currently 2 kilos down, kilo a week over the last 2 weeks. You had this overall target of 8 kilos. Just ask whether we need to adjust the target. Speak to your coach and see, well, actually, would I be happy from 6 kilos? Because what I don't want is anybody to get demotivated, because that first couple of weeks might have took a little bit longer to figure out where you are than what we expected. That's completely normal. But just make sure that you're not overstretching these targets, and that at least you have a lower limit. So rather than 8 kilos, what I'd say in that situation is somewhere between 5 and 8 kilos lost will be your target, somewhere in that range. So make it a range. I'm not saying do less or go for less, but I'm saying if in 8 weeks you are 5 kilos down, that's still massive progress, especially if you've taken the approaches that we suggest, because we know that the vast majority of that will be body fat. It might even be that you're 8 kilos down in body fat, but you've gained 3 kilos of muscle in that amount of time, dependent on where you're at, dependent on body composition at the minute, dependent on training experience. So just make sure that you're very clear on what your targets are over the next few weeks. And again, don't fall into the trap of, if you know that we'd set this initial 8 kilo target, but you know that you've got 14 kilos to lose. If you're well on top of things now, I still want that end date to be of the end of the 8-week challenge to be a target that you aim for. But I also want you to appreciate that that might not be the end date. That's not a case of, okay, well, I'm done now. I'm going to go completely change all my habits, get out of training and things. What I want you to be thinking of is actually, yes, I've got this target for 8 weeks, and then I might step back for a week or two and just take it a little bit steadier. But actually, what's the end goal? If we've got a strategy now that's working and we're on top of things, and we stay on top of things for the next 4 weeks, then that's going to work beyond that as well. So, don't fall into the trap of giving yourself a target that's not really an end date. At the end of the day, this is going to be about constantly making progress. Now, monitoring, just one final thing on this. We'd look at it from top 3 considerations. So if you're not seeing the results that you'd want to see, before you make any other changes to the plan, ask yourself, how's my training been in terms of compliance and in terms of intensity, in terms of not just getting there and ticking the box, but when I'm actually there doing the workout, how's that going? Same in terms of nutrition. How's my nutrition been? Not just that I'm tracking nutrition, but how close am I to those targets that are set on a daily basis? And if I am close to those targets, okay, great. But am I hitting them in a way that we'd like to see as well, in terms of something that's sustainable, something that's managing overall calories and energy intake and so on. And then the last thing, obviously, is recovery. How's my recovery at the minute? Sleep, overall nutrition, yes, obviously feeds into this, but also just stress management, really important. And if any of this is off, if you're looking at any of these and thinking, well, actually my training's not right at the minute, then it might not be a case of changing the plan. It might be much more to do with just getting on top of that. Same in terms of nutrition. Rather than changing it, it might be increase adherence. Same in terms of stress management and recovery. If you're sleeping 4 hours a night and you're dealing with a lot of stress at the minute, then it might just be a week that you want to go a little bit higher on your calories and almost take a mini break from dieting just while we manage that and then go back into it. They're all considerations, they're all things that we can look at, but at the end of the day, they're all the things that are going to stop you getting to where you want to be. So please make us aware, communicate with us. Reset and refocus. So again, building on that last one, what are your goals now for the next 4 weeks? We had that clear goal for the first 8 weeks. Did they need to adjust? Are we clear now on the next 4 weeks? And again, the original end goal might not be appropriate. However, Another really key point is that just because you might have had 2 good weeks, 2 bad weeks on this, or you might have still not really felt like you've got going on this challenge, or you might be absolutely flying. From now, everyone's at the same point. Again, I'm asking you all to reset, refocus. So we are now all back on track as soon as you complete this, as soon as you reset, refocus. Don't give up on the challenge. There's still a hell of a lot that you can achieve in the next 4 weeks. And at the end of the day, it's about making progress. I want everybody watching this, everybody that sort of trains here at FX, to be getting the results that I know that you're capable of. So making sure that, don't worry about how the last couple of weeks have been, because that's done now. Let's look forward into, okay, what can I achieve in the next 4 weeks, and then potentially beyond as well. Now, I've actually changed this to reflect, reset, and refocus. What I want you to see that as, and what I mean by that is reflect on what's going well, but also reflect on what might be getting in the way at the minute. If you know that there's certain days that you plan to train and that you're expecting to get to the gym, but there's something more important that needs doing that night every single time when it's getting to that week continuously, have another look, reflect, and make sure that you make a note of that. Okay, Thursday nights might not be my ideal night to get into the gym. Maybe I can do a Tuesday instead. Something along those lines, because that's going to be really important. So reflect on, how's your training going? Same in terms of nutrition. Okay, well, I am finding that I can't put my meals in the microwave at work because I've just not got time to stop for 10 minutes at a time to heat some food and then sit down and have that meal. I'm constantly sort of being cold and being interrupted and up and down. Okay, how can we make your calories work in that situation? We know that that's going to come up. So what can we do? Would there be a different strategy that we have rather than something that needs heating? Maybe something that still makes up your calories and your protein, but you have it as more sort of 2 or 3 small meals throughout the day. Maybe you're making use of different shakes, even if it's just ones that you grab from the shop, whether it's ready-made ones, whether it's ones that you make up yourself. Just, again, reflect on what's going well and what's not, and make sure that you try and identify, well, I've said that I'm going to do this, but this is getting in the way. Once you've got that, reset with your current end goal. What do we know that you can do for the next few weeks? And then all of it needs re-looking at. We need to then make the plan work to get to that next 4-week end goal. And I'm confident that from right now, regardless of how your last few weeks have been, we can all get back on track, or we can keep making progress at an optimum rate. Even if things are going perfect and you don't do this, chances are in the next week or 2, something's going to come up that'll trip you up, or we're going to be not optimizing the progress as much as we can. And guys, really key point is that communication throughout all of this is going to be absolutely key. Speak to your coach. You can all speak to me whenever you want. So just drop me a message if you ever need to, and we can go through whatever needs going through. On to the questions. These are just a few of the ones that have come in on the check-in forms, but I'll try and get through as many as I can. Okay. How to get back training post-COVID. Simple one, this. Accept that your capacity is going to be reduced potentially. Now, if you've just been isolating, you've had no symptoms, but you've tested positive, obviously that's going to be a little bit different to having fairly intense, severe symptoms. Now, I would always say that start off, one, make sure that you can complete day-to-day tasks okay without struggling before you try and train. As soon as you know that, yes, you know that you're somewhere near recovered, then get back into the gym. But start off with lower intensity work on cardio. Don't do any maximal breathing stuff. And even in the weights, do the full movements, but give yourself less sets, maybe less reps, and certainly less load. Almost treat it as a deload week where you're going to do a bit less, but you try and get the training frequency back to the normal routine. So if you usually train 5 days a week, try and get back into training 5 days a week, just do a lot less during that training session. You will probably find that your higher intensity cardios or even mid-intensity cardios are more effective than anything else, dependent on the symptoms that you've had. One thing that I would say is get back to normal eating and training frequency. So with these lower intensity sessions, before we try and push back to normal, and it would probably be about a week for most of you getting back in the gym. But if you've been fairly severely ill or you're still struggling with breathing, that can take a hell of a lot longer, and we just have to monitor that and go off how you're feeling. What I'd say though is if you're struggling with your breathing, then make sure that you keep into lower intensities, you keep into the sort of work that you are more than comfortable with from a cardio perspective. And actually, make sure that you're speaking to us so that we can assess whether it's a good idea for you to be training any sort of conditioning work at the minute. Probably will be, but again, I just want to make sure that we've got them stats and that we know how everyone's doing. You might want to relook at, say, body weight, blood pressure, and different things like that, just so that you've got a baseline for when you come back, so that as we train for that couple of weeks, we can get back into everything. Basically, don't expect, if you've had a break due to illness. So having a break from the gym can actually mean that, it can do you a lot of benefits anyway, a lot of good. And that's why we put like deloads in, or steady weeks, or even off weeks occasionally. However, in this situation, it's going to be a case of just ease back in. And to be honest, anytime that you're out of the gym, ease back in. You want to get a frequency up pretty quickly, but you want to do less in each session, less load, probably less volume, and certainly less in terms of training zones that you might be uncomfortable with. Healthy snack ideas. So next one, high protein. Yeah, guys, there's loads. I mean, one thing that I would say straight away is, if you've not considered having a protein supplement, a protein shake, then they're just going to be so much easier to try to get a high protein snack in there to hit your targets. I mean, that's the simplest one that we can say. Now, is food going to be more beneficial overall if you can put it into a small meal? Potentially, but it depends, because if you're ticking all the boxes with 3 good meals a day anyway, and you just need more protein in your diet, and that's the only box that you're not ticking, then maybe not. But I mean, we've got these sort of ready-made supplements again, like UFIT shakes that you can get from anywhere, grenade type shakes. There's also high protein yogurts, which can be really good options, like the Arla yogurts, especially like the squeezy ones that are just really easy. But then we can obviously start to come up and bars, and just be aware that shakes are usually going to have slightly more protein, slightly less carbs. Bars are a bit more of an even split between carbs and protein, and a little bit more fat as well, usually in the bars. And then we can get to actual foods. So, whether it's as soon as you're getting into foods, and it's just the same rules as normal high protein foods. So what I would say is, watch out for things that you think are high protein, like, for example, peanut butter on toast. Is that a good option for a fat loss plan? Probably not, because the calorie density, the overall energy density of that meal is so much higher than what it needs to be for you to get 10, 15 grams of protein in. It's just not necessary to do that. You would, in that situation, from an energy balance point of view, providing that the rest of your diet's ticking all the boxes we need it to, probably be better off with a supplement. And it'll certainly help you get to your goals a little bit quicker. We can also have things that, like, so many people rule out sandwiches and things. Again, it depends on your total calories that you've got, but ham and low fat cheese thins might be a really good snack to have. You might get 20 grams of protein, 20 grams of carbs. And if you don't want a protein bar, that sort of thing might come in and fit there. We can obviously have salads and different types of foods that, again, we're going for emphasis on the higher protein foods. But ultimately, healthy snack ideas, high protein, they're not really any different. It comes down to your situation and what you're trying to achieve with that. It's going to depend on, do you mean just high protein? If you do, then obviously we're looking to minimize carbs, minimize fats. So if you're going for a whole food approach for that, things like salads are probably going to be a good option, like a tuna salad or a smoked salmon salad, chicken salads, anything along them lines. Yeah, absolutely. If we're going for a more balanced approach, then things like sandwiches or some sort of tuna pasta might be good ideas. And again, it's balanced dependent on what you need and where you're at. Most people will probably just be looking at snacks as being high protein only, which obviously limits us in terms of food types. And again, normal, snacking on nuts and things can be fine from a health point of view. But again, it's gonna use a hell of a lot of the fats that you've got if we're trying to keep on a low fat diet. So yes, it's okay, but then you certainly need to modify your meals around it. So first thing that I'd look at is higher protein options of foods or supplements that are minimizing everything else. And it comes into one of the questions later, so I'll go back to that. Pre versus post-workout nutrition. Guys, again, I'm answering this on a on an overall basis, but if we look for fat loss initially, well, you want pre-workout, you might want some carbs still, but only a small amount, just so that you can regulate blood sugar while you're training for high intensity training sessions. For low intensity sessions, you green zone cardio and things, you shouldn't really need any carbs beforehand. Make sure that you're hydrated. Make sure that you might want to have some caffeine or something like that. You know, some people just feel like they train a little bit better. I wouldn't say you need a pre-workout at all for anything along them lines. Caffeine is certainly an optional. But I'd say protein, maybe an hour or so before, might be a decent option just to make sure that you're feeling okay and that you're getting those protein servings as well in there. Is it going to have much of a difference? Probably not. There's probably nothing really for low intensity sessions apart from making sure that you're hydrated, that you necessarily need to have before training. And again, post-workout depends on how quickly we need to recover. So if you're training one evening and you've got a high intensity training session in the morning, yeah, definitely you want to get your carbs back in. If you again are going for a more balanced approach, then just have a decent meal after training. You'll be absolutely fine. If you need to absolutely optimize that recovery, then the main things to get back in are protein and carbs straight away. I think everyone will want protein as soon as possible after training. Does it make a massive difference as to whether it's straight after or 4 hours later? Again, it does make a difference, absolutely. Does it make a big enough difference to be worth putting in for me? Yeah, I'd be saying get some protein pretty soon after training, because ultimately you're going to be wanting to train quite a lot. But if you're only training 3 times a week, there's probably not going to be a massive amount of, yes, we potentially sort of a little bit behind in terms of when we're able to get some recovery to that muscle. But there's going to be bigger things that we're looking at, such as total calorie balance there, and total training time and things. So again, pre and post workout nutrition completely depends on your goals. If your goal's gaining weight, then yeah, definitely carbs and protein both before and after. I'd usually say just not too soon before. We can go into odd days, you can have less, but ultimately if you're either gaining weight or you've got a hard training session, you certainly want to be starting that with fairly high levels of carbs in your system. And then you want to be getting them back in as soon as possible, especially if you're training quite regularly or if you're training really high intensities that we know is going to use a lot of that. Alternative snacks such as such as popcorn versus crisps. Are they useful or should I just completely avoid it? Again, guys, it depends on the diet. Is there a reason to do it? Well, yeah, if you're saving calories straight away and you're feeling like that's probably something that you want to include in the diet, if you're 300 calories less from going for the popcorn option than the crisps option, then straight away, I mean, there's definitely a benefit there if you feel like that's satiating and things. In terms of any other benefits, probably not, but certainly from is it worth doing? Well, it can be. Again, diets are more than just fitting into your numbers. It's about, okay, well, what's actually going to be sustainable? What's going to be an approach that you're happy with, where you're not feeling hungry all the time, you're managing appetite, you feel like you're recovering from training and so on. And that fits into one of these questions, the last question actually, and it fits into the early one on healthy snack ideas. How to not feel like it's a waste of carbs or a waste of fats or a waste of protein. Basically, if you're going for lower calories, just because you can fit a cheeseburger in or a Mars bar into your diet, it doesn't mean that it's a good idea. So say you've got 1,600 calories in your day and you have 1,000 for one of your meals because you just think, well, I can fit this in. So I'm going to have this and then I'll just go pure protein for the rest of the day. Do that a couple of days. Yes. I mean, occasionally you might, if it's just a craving for that food, that might not actually be a horrendous thing to do every now and then. But what's more likely and what we will find is that you end up doing that and then you end up really struggling with the rest of your diet. You have to hate everything else because you have to go too low in terms of carbs for all of the other meals, too low in terms of fats for all of the other meals. And it feels like you're just having pure protein almost for all of these other meals to hit somewhere near your numbers. That's nothing wrong with the diet. That's because of your split, because most of your carbs and fats have come into that one serving that usually we wouldn't be suggesting that you do. You'd have a couple more balanced meals, ideally, to manage that appetite, to manage the enjoyment of your diet. And a lot of it's going to fit into that. So just making sure, how do I feel like it's not a waste of carbs, and is it worth changing these snacks and so on? Yeah, absolutely. And I'd go back to, in fact, I'll share a blog in the group today, which is about the food swaps and things, because again, so important to make sure that you're finding foods that actually move you towards your diet and that are helping you move forward. And I think that that's going to be important. You know, if you can have a chili made with 5% mince versus a chili made with 30% fat mince, then, and you're trying to limit fats, then obviously the 5% and increase protein, obviously the 5% one makes more sense to have. Same in terms of sauces and condiments and everything along those lines. So food swaps is a massive thing. Once you get in your diet somewhere near where it needs to be in terms of a structure that you can handle, without it being perfect on numbers, but somewhere near, then we can start to look at, okay, well, can I include this? Can I include this? But for now, realistically, you want to focus on the main meals, whatever the structure for your diet is, try and focus. And whether you want an even split, maybe not, but certainly no, you know, you want to minimize stuff like that junk food, because if you're trying to limit calories and restrict calories, and this is only if you're trying to restrict calories, those sort of meals might not, you know, they might be filling for a couple of hours, which is great, but it might make you hate the rest of your diet and think that you need that sort of food more often, rather than a more balanced approach that makes it manageable to stick to. Next one, coming away from the, in fact, I'll go through all the food ones now. If you go over your daily calorie goal, what should you do? This depends. So ultimately, it's going to depend on the main goals. If you go over one day, I imagine that this sort of means, should you then come down the following day? There's a lot of context to this one. So it's going to depend partly on your training schedule. Some training sessions you'll need to be fueled up for. So if you go over before that training session that you need to be fueled up for, that's fine. Most fat loss plans, we actually don't really look at that. We don't put loads of high intensity training in that you would have to be fueled up for, because performance isn't a main goal. Performance is obviously secondary. You will still develop fitness and things, but performance just isn't that important. So we don't need to fuel up for many of these training sessions, with the exception of making sure that you can manage blood sugar. What that means is that for me, if you're going over on a regular basis, then we're just not getting the structure right. If you go over as a one-off, I'd actually just get straight back onto your diet. And there's a few reasons for this. Is that what you tend to find is that if you're really high on calories a couple of days and then way too low for others, if you're going up and then you drop way too low, then you're more likely to go back up way too high again a few days after. And then it can get a bit sporadic and a bit sort of ad libitum, and you're just grabbing foods as and when, and it starts to deviate a little bit away from the targets that we want. So for me, if you go over on a day, even by 1,000 calories, what I would say is just get back on track to your diet and understand the impact that that day may have had. Won't be massive. Again, understanding how much weight you're going to gain, unless you go over by a good sort of 3,000-4,000 calories a day, you're not going to gain a pound in body fat, and that's over your target. So unless you're having a 5,000 or 6,000 calorie day, you're not gaining a pound of fat in that day, on top of obviously your normal sort of metabolism and things. So just because the weight goes up on the scales, we know that that's not you gaining a pound of body fat. What you will have is a lot of water retention. You'll have more food in transit in your system. You'll have more energy, your muscle glycogen is probably going to be higher, and that's going to be stored with even more water. So again, there's a lot going on. Your weight will go up, but give it a few days, that should come straight back down from being on a normal sort of calorie diet and just getting that food back out in your system, getting rid of that water retention. And yeah, you might have gained 100 grams in body fat, and then within a couple of days, we can definitely have oxidized that and got back to within a couple of hours, realistically, we can have oxidized that and got back to where you would normally be. But what I wouldn't suggest, for a couple of reasons, is going really high and then going too low to try and make up for it, because you end up with this sort of pattern to your diet: low, low, really high, low, low, really high. Whereas putting a refeed in, we've spoke about that, that's an option, but that's still going for a targeted approach. Whereas if you're constantly over your calorie goals on a Saturday, then it might be worth considering, okay, actually, I'm going to pull the rest of my week down and plan that to be a higher calorie day. Again, whether it's a massive issue, I suppose it depends how much you're going over, how often. But the total calories over sort of longer term, we tend to look at total average calories that you've consumed. And over shorter term, rather than looking over 24 hours, we're probably looking more, we'll keep it simple and look over 24 hours and just go, are you somewhere near that with a couple of meals in that day, 3 or 4 meals a day. Again, breakfast ideas, high protein, low calories, exactly the same in terms of healthy snacks. So supplements are definitely an option. Protein porridge and things like that can make it really easy to be on top of things. For me, I'll have things like smoked salmon salads if I'm trying to go for lower carbs. And you can have things like salads in the morning as well. There's no reason not to. There's definitely egg and omelette based sort of breakfast that people tend to have, like a ham and cheese and pepper omelette. Using the low fat cheese, you can go for using a combination of more egg whites than yolks and things if you're wanting to keep them calories down. There's pros and cons to doing all of this, guys. So again, it's going to be around what works for you. But definitely don't limit yourself to foods that you think aren't a breakfast food. I think that one of the biggest things is that we tend to have cereals and things for breakfast. And then if we want protein, then it tends to be sort of a full like fry up meal that we like, oh yeah, let's have a bacon butty because I want some protein in my breakfast. Not necessarily, again, same limitations as with everything else, is that if you're having high fat, high carb options as well, it's just going to be a hell of a lot of calories that's going straight away in your day. Might work for some of you, but obviously maybe not. One thing that I do want to say though is that there's not necessarily good or bad foods. It's just whether that food is going to help when we're looking at the full picture of the diet, from a blood sugar control, from an appetite control, from an energy levels, from supporting your training, supporting your recovery, and so on. So there's a bit more to it than just looking at calories. Anything else? Small meals often or big meals. I did a video on this this week. From a calorie point of view, it's going to make no difference. From a optimizing all the other things point of view, exactly what we're speaking about there, managing blood sugar, feeling better, managing appetite, and optimizing recovery from training and muscle building, then definitely small meals more often will have a bigger benefit. I don't think anyone can really question that. When they do, it's because they've probably not seen much in terms of how this works from muscle recovery and a muscle benefit point of view. However, again, it goes back to that. So if you're training fairly hard on a regular basis, if you're only training a couple of times a week, then that recovery might not be as much of a priority. So again, maybe it's not as important. Maybe practicality there is the bigger factor. And nutrition-wise, I think that's covered it. So training-wise, just a couple of questions here. I struggle with balance. So should I be using machines or just free weights? Simple answer is both. So ultimately, machines can give you that inherent stability. So they can allow you to work strength a lot of the time a little bit more than you'd be able to, especially if balance is the limitation. Because then being able to actually overcome that, or any other movement limitations at all, any reason that you can't optimize that movement, will be something that is a limiting factor before your strength. So if it's any movement issues, whether it's balance, stability, whether it's getting into certain positions, mobility, and so on, they may be a bigger factor in terms of the limitation. Whereas obviously what we'd want the limitation to be on the exercise is something where your muscles are getting to a limit, your body's getting to a limit. So we may need to program in both. We may need to have somewhere we're working on the movement and the coordinative elements and the skill development side, and then some that are simpler, that give you a little bit more stability inherently, so that we can just work the muscles to a limit, because otherwise the balance and things might go first. So yeah, you absolutely can be using machines. Should also be using potentially free weights, or at least body weight exercises, to just get used to moving your body in space as well. Pros and cons to both, but definitely part of a good program, you probably want to use a combination of these. Grip work for hands and wrists. I assume that that's just additional grip work. I can't remember what the actual question was. However, yes, what additional grip work can I be doing? A couple of options. So initially, things really simple stuff like carries, like a farmer's walk, and deadlifts. And you might need to use chalk for this as well, because if your hands get a bit sweaty, then obviously that's going to be a limiting factor. They can definitely help. We can do certain forearm exercises. You can do exercise with the fat grips that we've got just to make the barbell thicker. You can do hangs and holds where you're just simply holding a weight to try and work your grip. But one thing that I would say is at a certain point, grip becomes a limiting factor. So unless you're going to be training and it's really important for you that your grip isn't the limiting factor, in which case you're going to be using a hook grip anyway. So you're going to be using a different type of grip to what you think, either hook or alternating grip. Then realistically, it might be a case of changing the type of grip to hook or alternating grip. Or at some point, you know, we do have hand wraps for reasons. We do use chalk for reasons and things. So again, at some point in certain exercises, grip will become the limiting factor. I think in this context, I think that it's probably more a case of just going for them on things like deadlifts, maybe just going for an alternate grip rather than a standard overhand grip, or even maybe a hook grip, but hook grips take a little bit of getting used to. So maybe start with alternating and go from there. But yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't do grip work without using chalk. So we only use the liquid chalk. That's all we can have in the gym. And if you're using chalk, please make sure that you clean up after it. So it's going to get on the weights. It's going to get on everything that you use. It'll probably get all over your clothes as well. That's fine. If you're doing grip work, I'd probably be looking to use chalk, because if your hands are starting to slip anyway, there's not really much that you can do from that. So use some chalk. It's going to help with that. And then carries, holds, just general sort of weighted carries, just holding fairly heavy weights and just walking with them, or just holding them, or even body weight hangs. And then we can do other forearm based exercise and grip based exercise. We can do some wrist extensions and flexions, smaller muscle group work. But in reality, it's going to be more a case of squeezing those weights, holding those weights, and that'll help develop your grip. It's going to develop as you train in anyway. So it'll usually catch up initially and then drop off again afterwards. But again, making sure that your hands are dry is a really big factor, and alternating the grip on the lifts that you're finding that it's limiting with. If it's limiting with the deadlift, it's just that it's limiting with the deadlift. Start with using chalk and then alternate your grip if you need to, as we're working on this. But it may never catch up. You may always need to modify your grip on deadlifts or use hand wraps and things like that. Guidance on strength exercises and using the new kit. Just a key point that I wanted to cover here. Don't do any exercise in the gym that you're not comfortable with. Always speak to one of the coaches. So if there's exercises that you are comfortable with but not sure about, and you're training on your own in the gym, film that exercise and send it over to your coach and ask for a bit of feedback. We do this anyway on the online coaching, any online coaching that we do. So film it, send it over, and we can then have a look and get some feedback. Obviously, ideally get some of the sessions, get to some of the classes like the FX Fit classes, or anytime that FX WODs, anytime that it's supervised in the gym, get to those, and then you can just grab the coach and say, I'm doing a set of squats, can you keep an eye on it? In terms of the machines, again, ask us to show you how to use it if you've not used it before. I don't want you just sort of trying to figure it out. Just speak to a coach and we will show you how to use these machines. I'll do new videos for pretty much everything in the gym. I'm going to try and put a more detailed video on over the coming months. So again, job one is make sure that you're using the videos for most of the exercises to give you an idea. If you're not comfortable with it, speak to the coach. What else have we got? How heavy should I lift? Fairly heavy, ultimately. Now, this isn't a total weight thing, but what this is more a case of everything else, more a case of, okay, how heavy do I need to go on these exercises? Do you need to go to failure every set? Absolutely not. But at the same time, as soon as you pass learning the movement, if you're just learning the movement, you can go pretty light and just very gradually build up. As soon as you pass that, if you feel like you can get at least another 4 or 5 reps at the end of every set, it's probably not heavy enough. We probably need to get to a point where it's going to be, yeah, I wasn't at my limit, but I know that I wouldn't like to do more than say 3 or 4 more of them in this set without having a rest. So again, get to that point. It should be challenging. It shouldn't be your limit. It shouldn't mean that you're lifting so heavy that your form at the end of your set goes out of the window. This is all of this that I refer to should be, unless I say otherwise, it's to technical failure. So it's to the point where you can no longer lift with extremely good form. Every rep should look exactly the same up to the point that you finish your set. But it should obviously feel like it's getting more and more challenging as you go through that set. Now, if we've said you've got 4 sets of 10 and you're using 10 kilo dumbbells and the next one up is 12, and you can do 10 with 10s, but you get to 12s and you can only do 2 or 3, you want to go up in reps. So rather than going up in weight, you'd go then, rather than trying to do sets of 10, you might go keep to the 10 kilo dumbbells, but go up to 15 reps or do another set at the end of it, so that you're still getting more work done, but you're not needing to go to a weight that you're not yet comfortable with. And then obviously over time, if you can do 20 with 10 kilo dumbbells, then you're probably going to be all right to do 8 to 10 with the 12s on some lifts. Hopefully that makes sense. What have I missed? I know that I've missed one there in terms of nutrition. Routine and planning food and training, I suppose, around unpredictable schedules. Okay, so this one. What I'd usually say is obviously try and plan as much as you can and plan for the stuff that you know is going to come up. Plan for issues. Okay, well, I'm going to get stuck in work probably 2 days a week. So if that comes up on my gym day, how do I cope with that? I know this sounds very generic, but it's absolutely true. Routine in terms of food. Sorry, the first one I'm talking there about training. So, okay, how often can I actually train? If I'm setting 5 days a week, is that realistic? Or should I say, I'm going to set 3 days a week, I'm going to aim for 5, but as long as I tick the 3, that's fine. If I'm aiming for 5, that's great. But what I don't want anyone to feel like if they're doing 3 or 4 days a week, like they're off plan because they've only done 3 or 4 days a week. So make sure that you know what workouts you should be doing. Don't follow a split that means that you must do 5 if you're not definitely going to get 5 workouts in. Now you can run a 5-day split over 8 or 9 days, so that is okay to do. But I'd usually say it's probably not optimum. You probably want to go to a split where you sort of every week you're trying to repeat similar movements, just because at this point it just makes more sense. It's going to keep it simple for everyone. So from a training perspective, getting into that routine, making sure that you're on top of everything, and making sure that your overall sort of schedule is planned and you know that you're going to get in the gym at least 3 days, and never sort of, if you're not sure with your routine, as soon as that opportunity comes up, you should be making it to the gym. You should be saying, you know what, I'm going to tick this box because I don't know what's going to come up tomorrow. So start and try and front load your week. And then hopefully by Wednesday evening, you might have said you're going to do 3 workouts. You've done all 3. And then anything else is additional for that week. It's not a case of have it off, then after, like have the time off after that. It's a case of just, carry on training, do what you can. So from a schedule point of view, I'd say plan as much as you can, plan your obstacles, know what might come up and try and front load your workouts. And make sure that you've got an alternative, obviously, for if you can't get into the gym, but don't be feeling like you're not on plan, not on track because you've only trained 3 days. Try and never have more than 3 days off at any one time though. So try not to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then not be back until Monday. It's fine if it's a one-off, but for the most part, 2 days at any one time is probably the most that you want off together. And then you want to get back in so that you're feeling on top of your routine. Food around unpredictable schedules, again, make it as easy as possible for you to have these backups. So you might have a perfect meal that you're trying to get, but make sure that you know what your backup is. For me, a lot of the time, this will come in, I'll try and have meals at work that I can sort of get and warm up. And again, I've spoke about this, but most of the time it simply doesn't happen. So what I've started doing is those meals that I'll warm up, I'll have them. If I get home for my lunch, I'll have them. If not, I'll have one in the evening. I'll have sandwiches, I'll have shakes, I'll have fuels, I'll even nip to the Spar sometimes and get a sandwich and some chicken to go with it, and a diet drink or water. And again, maybe some more of these protein shakes. So exactly why I've got this today is that Saturdays are a little bit easier from a schedule point of view. And that's why I've also had some food. And on my diet, I do fit quite a bit of food. So I've got some mini cheddars there as well. But ultimately, it's about knowing, okay, what am I trying to achieve? Schedule is going to be unpredictable. So what have I got as a backup? Can I take some foods? If not, if I'm going to have to stop at the service station, say that you're traveling, what would I get in that situation? Because they're only going to have meal deals. But rather than crisps and a cheese sandwich, you might want to get, say, like a high protein sandwich and then a protein based snack, or a salad or a veg based snack, something dependent on what fits around your meals. Is certainly going for lower calorie drinks and just trying to get waters or diet drinks. And again, you can always grab the protein shakes and things. They're commonplace now in any food stores, so you'd be able to find them. So again, just making it fit. Obviously, we can plan the day. Ultimately, your main thing is that you're going to have at least 3 different servings of protein, at least 3 different meals in your day, and all of them should be fairly high in protein. Obviously, optimized if you get more. If you're looking to build muscle, I'd probably say at least 5 meals a day. Again, just so that we make sure that we're ticking that box to optimize it, and then get your calories right. And although we talk about all this in context of long-term health, ultimately, there's a couple of key things that we're looking at from a short-term body composition change, and that's getting your calories right, it's getting your protein amounts right, and it's making sure that it's something that you can stick to and that you feel like you've got enough energy to complete all of the training that's assigned. If you're doing that, to be honest, you will get results. Whether we've got issues in terms of how you're going about that and things, which we may have, and it might be more to do with long-term health and sustainability, but tick the box in terms of calories, make sure that it's split into fairly even regular meals, and make sure that you're training well and you're able to stick to it and that you're enjoying what you're doing and that you're feeling on top of things and feeling motivated. If you're doing that, guys, you honestly won't go far wrong. And that hopefully wraps up the questions. About an hour. That took longer than I thought. Anyway, I hope it helps. And any questions that you've got, you can just still fire them over on the check-ins. Good luck for the next 4 weeks. Make sure that you reset, refocus, and let's go again.